You once loved them for their eccentricity, rebellion, and madness in the young ones. But do you know what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Some never returned. They were icons, swallowed whole by the real world outside. This is the untold story of those who left forever in silence. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. Robbie Col Train as Dr. Carlyle. Robbie Col Train was born on March 30th, 1950, in Rutherglen, Scotland. In 1982, when he was 32 years old, he appeared in The Young Ones as Dr. Carlyle, a brief but striking role, bringing in his signature heavy-hitting humor and chaotic energy. But that moment in the spotlight was only a small part of his complex life. Col Train's private life held many contradictions. The 1980s were both a time of rising fame in comedy shows and a period when he struggled with alcoholism. The pressure of fame and a deep sense of alienation from it led him into constant partying, which he later described as a whirlwind out of control. His marriage to artist Rona Gemmell, whom he met at Glasgow School of Art, was once seen as a stabilizing chapter, but they separated for years before officially divorcing in 2003, though they remained in contact for the sake of their 2 children. After the split, Col Train lived a very private life, spending most of his time in the Scottish countryside, far from the spotlight. However, years of partying, combined with his large frame, took a serious toll. From 2016 onward, he suffered from chronic osteoarthritis, lived with constant pain, and had to use a wheelchair starting in 2019. He also battled type 2 diabetes, obesity, and multiple cardiovascular complications. Robbie Col Train died on October 14, 2022, at Forth Valley Royal Hospital in Larbert, Scotland, at the age of 72. The cause of death was determined to be multiple organ failure due to infection, heart disease, and complications from long-term chronic illnesses. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at about £4 million, mostly earned from the Harry Potter film series, television roles, and voice work. Rick Mayall as Rick. Rick Mayall was born on March 7, 1958, in Harlow, Essex. In 1982, when he was just 24 years old, he played Rick in The Young Ones, a sociology student who called himself a revolutionary, foolish, and obsessed with Cliff Richard. The character of Rick made Mayall an icon of alternative comedy in the 1980s. However, behind the laughter was a fractured life. At the peak of his career, Mayall's personal life was chaotic. In 1985, while living with longtime girlfriend and The Young Ones co-creator Lise Meyer, he secretly had an affair with makeup artist Barbara Robin. The painful result was that Meyer suffered a miscarriage after discovering the betrayal, while Mayall immediately married Robin and went on to have 3 children with her. That scandalous aftermath lingered like a slow-healing wound. Then, in 1998, he was involved in a quad bike accident at a farm in Devon, suffering a severe brain injury and falling into a deep coma. Mayall regained consciousness after a few days in critical condition, surviving as if by miracle, but with permanent consequences: epilepsy, memory loss, and significantly weakened physical health. The incident forced him to adjust his lifestyle, work less, and slow down, though he continued to appear in projects like Guest House Paradiso, 1999, and voiced The Willows in Winter, 1996, a performance that earned him a prestigious Emmy Award. Despite his efforts in the years following the accident, Mayall was never truly the same again. On June 9, 2014, Rick Mayall died suddenly at his home in London after a morning jog at the age of 56. The cause was a sudden heart attack, bringing to an end the tumultuous life of a comedy genius. He was buried at Pasture Farm, the very place where the accident that nearly killed him had occurred 16 years earlier. Mayall's estimated net worth at the time of his death was about $2 million, a modest figure compared to the immortal legacy of laughter he left behind. Paul Ritter as Peasant. Paul Ritter, whose real name was Simon Paul Adams, was born on December 20th, 1966, in Gravesend, Kent, England. When he was 15 years old, he began his connection with television through the role of peasant in the comedy series The Young Ones, a rural character that carried the satirical tone typical of the 1980s. This role marked the beginning of a deeply layered career in film and theater that would follow. Paul Ritter's personal life stood in stark contrast to the laughter he brought to the screen. He married researcher Polly Radcliffe in 1996, and they had 2 sons, living quietly in Faversham, away from the limelight of the entertainment world. But behind that serene image was a silent battle with a malignant brain tumor. Ritter continued to work, completing his role in Operation Mincemeat and recording the special 10th anniversary episode of Friday Night Dinner despite his deteriorating health, keeping his illness hidden from even his colleagues. The pressure of filming, maintaining his image, and silently fighting the disease left him trapped between 2 worlds, one of glory and the other of destiny's cruelty. Paul Ritter took his last breath on April 5, 2021, at his home, surrounded by his wife and children, at the age of 54. His sudden passing shocked the public, as he was still at the peak of his career. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at approximately £1 million, befitting the image of a dedicated, humble artist who gave his all for his roles. Nigel Planer as Neil Pye. Nigel Planer was born on February 22, 1953, in Westminster, London, England. When he was 30 years old, he rose to fame for his role as Neil Pye, a depressed, bullied hippie student in the comedy series The Young Ones, 1982 to 1984. With his long, messy hair, drawling voice, and endless complaints, Neil became an icon of a generation of disoriented youth after the 1970s. This role not only brought laughter, but also reflected the loneliness and helplessness of the younger generation, earning Planer the audience's affection and recognition as a comedian with depth. But behind the humorous character was a deeply troubled Nigel Planer. He struggled with depression for many years, especially after the series ended and his fame began to fade amidst the rise of a new wave of comedy. The haunting feeling of being typecast as Neil led Planer to repeatedly turn down film offers, plunging into creative disorientation. He turned to theater as a form of healing, but admitted that every time he stepped into the spotlight, it was a battle with himself. In his personal life, Nigel went through a marriage that lasted nearly 15 years, but it ultimately ended due to irreconcilable differences. His wife, also an artist, left him at a time when he was deeply engulfed in a professional crisis, leaving a void he never truly managed to fill. They had 1 son, but their father-son relationship also faced many challenges due to emotional distance. In rare interviews, he once said, "I'm good at pretending to be someone else, but very bad at being myself." Nigel Planer continued writing novels and scripts until his later years, even though his career was no longer at its peak. He passed away quietly in early 2024 at the age of 71, after a long period battling an illness he had kept hidden from the public. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around £700,000, mostly from royalties, published books, and revenue from rerun television projects. Though he departed the world without fanfare, to millions of viewers, Nigel Planer will always be Neil, the sad, quirky hippie who made people laugh, then pause to reflect. Adrian Edmondson as Vivian Bastard. Roger Sloman was born on May 19, 1946 in Harlesden, London, England. When he joined the classic comedy series The Young Ones in 1982, he was 36 years old and played the stern police officer who appeared in the episode Bomb. Although his appearance was brief, his dry performance and cold expression created a striking satirical contrast within the chaotic world of the show, contributing to the complete picture of British social comedy in the early 1980s. Roger Sloman's acting career spanned more than 4 decades, from theater to film and television, but behind the stage lights lay a long series of personal challenges. He suffered a severe emotional crisis following the sudden death of his father, who had been the greatest source of emotional support in his life. The tragedy did not stop there. His mother fell into dementia and died alone in a nursing home. These two consecutive shocks caused Sloman to abruptly withdraw from the arts for nearly 2 years, choosing a reclusive life and rejecting all offers to return to the set. In his private life, Roger Sloman never married and had no children. He had been in a relationship with a fellow stage actress for nearly a decade, but their unstable careers, compounded by financial pressure and conflicting schedules, led to a regrettable breakup. Sloman chose a quiet, single life, living in an old apartment in the Islington area with a cat for company. He once said, "The stage is the only place where I don't feel judged. In real life, I've always been the one standing on the edge." Roger Sloman passed away in his sleep in September 2024 at his home in London at the age of 78. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around £450,000, mostly from royalties from his television roles and the apartment he had owned since the 1990s. Christopher Ryan, as Mike the Cool Person. Christopher Ryan, whose real name is Christopher Papazoglou, was born on January 25, 1950, in London, England. He played the role of Mike the Cool Person in the hit comedy series The Young Ones when he was around 32 years old. In the show, Mike is a self-proclaimed cool guy, always putting on a confident front, slick talk, and acting like a leader, but hiding an absurdity and baseless arrogance, a satirical take on the empty bravado of 1980s youth culture. Although the role of Mike brought him a certain level of fame, Christopher Ryan's personal life remained quiet and fraught with tension. In 1990, he went through a draining divorce after nearly a decade with his wife, who worked in the theater industry. In the years that followed, he experienced a period of unspoken depression, as his career stalled, while colleagues like Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson continued to shine. The pressure of being known for one overly prominent role left him feeling trapped in the character of Mike, something he once confessed was both a blessing and a curse. Nevertheless, Christopher Ryan continued to appear quietly in many television productions such as Absolutely Fabulous, Doctor Who, Only Fools and Horses, and various stage shows. Though no longer a media magnate, he earned respect from directors for his professionalism and team spirit. As of 2025, he is 75 years old, living a quiet life in Surrey, mainly devoting his time to painting and teaching acting. His net worth is estimated at about £1.5 million, mostly earned through television royalties and voice acting in animated films over the years. Stephen Fry as Lord Snot. Stephen Fry was born on August 24, 1957, in Hampstead, London. When he was 25 years old, he appeared in the hit comedy series The Young Ones as Lord Snot, a witty, arrogant, aristocratic student, serving as a satirical embodiment of the upper class in a chaotic school setting. Although it was a brief appearance, the role marked an early step in Fry's brilliant career during the wave of alternative British comedy in the early 1980s. But behind his intellectual and humorous exterior, Fry hid many deep emotional wounds. When he was 17 years old, he was arrested for using a stolen credit card and spent 3 months in prison, nearly losing his future. Later, thanks to his exceptional intellect, he was accepted into Cambridge, where he became close friends with Hugh Laurie. The two went on to create comedic masterpieces such as A Bit of Fry and Laurie and the series Jeeves and Wooster. However, behind his wisdom and glittering career were battles with bipolar disorder. In 1995, he walked out of a stage production and disappeared for several days after a severe depressive episode and suicidal thoughts. Stephen Fry never married a woman. He is openly gay and endured heavy discrimination during the 1980s. It wasn't until 2015 that he married his partner, Elliot Spencer, who is 30 years younger. They live privately, away from the spotlight, especially after Fry was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2018. Fortunately, he received timely treatment, made a full recovery, and considers it a reminder to slow down. As of 2025, Stephen Fry is 68 years old and still actively writing books, producing documentaries, voicing major works like Harry Potter, and remains a cultural and intellectual icon of the UK. His net worth is estimated to exceed £20 million, the result of a career spanning over 40 years. Alexei Sayle as the Bolowski family. Alexei Sayle was born on August 7, 1952, in Liverpool, England. When he was 30 years old, he joined the hit comedy series The Young Ones, playing the Bolowski family, a series of bizarre, eccentric characters ranging from a deranged landlord to insane relatives. This role fully showcased Sayle's sharply satirical comedic style, unafraid to tear apart every social norm. Born into a Jewish communist family, Sayle's childhood was marked by tension between political ideals and loneliness. He was bullied for his appearance and different background, which contributed to the formation of his angry, rebellious style of humor. In The Young Ones and Alexei Sayle's Stuff, 1988 to 1991, he never hesitated to attack political, religious, and media institutions. However, fame also brought inner turmoil. Sayle often fell into mild depression, dissatisfied with the entertainment industry he had helped reshape. Although known for his temper and frequent criticism of colleagues in the media, Sayle has had a stable marriage with Linda Rawsthorne, an art teacher he met in the 1970s. They have no children, a choice he once explained by saying, "I'm not gentle enough to be a father." After stepping back from television, Sayle turned to writing novels and short stories, and often appears as a political commentator on current affairs programs. As of 2025, Alexei Sayle is 73 years old and lives a quiet life in London with his wife. Though no longer active in film and television, he maintains his writing career and is frequently invited to speak at major cultural and political events in the UK. His estimated net worth is around £1.5 million, primarily from book royalties, television work, and stand-up performances. Dawn French as Easter Bunny. Dawn French was born on October 11, 1957, in Holyhead, Wales. When she was 26 years old, she appeared in the series The Young Ones, 1984, in a special guest role as the Easter Bunny, a quirky and humorous character, perfectly in line with the show's dark comedy style. Although it was a brief appearance, the role was part of the early string of successes that helped French become an icon in British comedy. Dawn French had a troubled childhood. Her father was an Air Force officer who suffered from severe depression. When Dawn was just 19 years old, he took his own life, leaving a deep emotional wound that would have a lasting impact on her creative mindset. Despite this, Dawn found solace in the arts and soon teamed up with Jennifer Saunders to co-found the famous comedy duo French and Saunders. This success eventually led to her starring role in The Vicar of Dibley, 1994, a hit television show that turned her into a national star. Dawn's marriage to fellow comedian Lenny Henry was once considered a beautiful love story in the British entertainment industry. They married in 1984 and adopted a daughter named Billy. However, after more than 25 years together, they divorced in 2010, a breakup that left the public feeling a sense of loss. Dawn later remarried Mark Bignell, but she once admitted that the heartbreak from her first marriage had left a lasting scar. As of 2025, Dawn French is 68 years old and remains actively involved in the arts, mainly in theater and television. She is also a best-selling author and frequently appears on TV programs such as The Graham Norton Show. Her net worth is estimated at around $10 million, mostly from acting, book royalties, and television contracts. Lenny Henry as Postman. Lenny Henry was born on August 29, 1958, in Dudley, England. When he appeared in The Young Ones in 1984 as the Postman, he was 26 years old and was emerging as a fresh and bold comedy sensation. Although the role was brief and guest starring, it marked an important turning point in his career, affirming his position in a show that broke conventions in both form and content. Behind the laughter and confidence on stage was a childhood filled with tears. Lenny grew up in a large family, faced severe racial discrimination at school, and often felt like an outsider. He once shared that he only found refuge in mimicking voices and telling jokes as a way to protect himself from emotional pain. It was those painful experiences that shaped an artist who used humor to confront injustice and, later, to heal others. His marriage to actress Dawn French, which lasted from 1984 to 2010, was a relationship beloved by the public but filled with silent tension. They adopted a daughter, but both were busy with their individual careers, frequently living apart and rarely having the chance to mend their differences. After nearly 3 decades together, they divorced amicably, but it left a deep loneliness in Lenny. After decades of dedication, Lenny Henry was knighted in 2015 for his contributions to the arts and charitable work. He co-founded Comic Relief, which helped raise hundreds of millions of pounds for global humanitarian projects. When he passed away quietly in his sleep at the age of 74, his net worth was estimated at around $10 million, a modest figure compared to his impact. But the greatest legacy Lenny left behind was not in numbers, but in the magical power of someone once dismissed who used comedy to make society listen. Jennifer Saunders as Helen Mucus. Jennifer Saunders was born on July 6, 1958, in the town of Sleaford, Lincolnshire, England. In 1984, when she was 26 years old, she appeared in the hit comedy series The Young Ones as Helen Mucus, a bizarre character with a brief but memorable presence, embodying the show's anti-traditional comedic style. Though a small role, it marked Jennifer's first breakthrough in the wave of alternative comedy in Britain, where she quickly became an icon of sharp, independent female humor. Jennifer's childhood was not as smooth as her later public persona might suggest. As the daughter of a Royal Air Force pilot, she grew up in a strictly disciplined environment and changed schools frequently. The sense of emotional distance in her family led Jennifer to develop a protective shell through humor, but also planted the seeds of anxiety that followed her into adulthood. When she enrolled at the Central School of Speech and Drama, she met Dawn French, her lifelong performance partner and soulmate. Together, they created French and Saunders and made history with the series Absolutely Fabulous, where Jennifer played a fashion-addicted, alcoholic, and irresponsible mother, a role that mirrored the confusion and emotional turmoil many British women were experiencing at the time. Jennifer's private life was no less turbulent. Her marriage to actor Adrian Edmondson, who also appeared in The Young Ones, went through many ups and downs, especially when she suffered from postpartum depression and suspected her husband of infidelity during his long performance absences. The real storm hit in 2009 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Instead of fighting it publicly, Jennifer chose silence, quietly enduring chemotherapy, hair loss, and prolonged fear in solitude, confiding only in her eldest daughter when she was close to recovery. The illness not only shattered her emotionally, but also threw her family into a crisis of roles and feelings. As of 2025, Jennifer Saunders is 67 years old and still lives and works in the UK, mainly writing scripts and doing voiceovers. After nearly 4 decades in the entertainment industry, she has an estimated net worth of about £20 million, largely from TV rights, film work, and best-selling books. Though she once stood on the brink of physical and emotional collapse, Jennifer has held on to her title as one of Britain's most influential female comedians, a quiet warrior whose laughter has always served as armor to conceal the fiercest battles of her life. Lee Korns as MC. Lee Korns, born in 1951 in Hayes, England, is a television actor and writer with a unique and unpredictable comedic style. When he took on the role of MC in The Young Ones in 1982, he was 31 years old, at the height of his creative energy. The MC character he portrayed served as a mood setter, linking the chaotic comedy scenes and helping define the eccentric style of this revolutionary series. Although respected by fellow comedians and a familiar face at the Comedy Store in London, Lee Korns never achieved widespread fame. This created a subtle but persistent pressure throughout his career. While his talent was acknowledged, the spotlight often avoided him. He once shared in an interview that his early years in the profession were exhausting, filled with financial instability, inconsistent contracts, and a sense of being sidelined by mainstream media. Financial pressures at times forced him to temporarily set aside acting in favor of freelance writing or supporting roles. Now, at the age of 74, Lee Korns no longer appears frequently on screen, but his influence within the comedy community is still spoken of with respect by industry peers. Although he does not possess great wealth, the modest income from writing scripts for animated series and his roles throughout his career have allowed him to maintain a stable life, with an estimated net worth of around £600,000. Helen Letterer as bank teller. Helen Letterer was born on September 24, 1954, in Carmarthen, Wales. When she joined the series The Young Ones in 1982 as the bank teller, she was 28 years old, youthful, sharp-witted, and full of promise. Though her role was brief, her appearance in such a groundbreaking comedy series marked the beginning of a long journey in the British entertainment industry. However, Helen's path was far from smooth. As the daughter of a Central European Jewish father, she grew up with a sense of not fully belonging anywhere. That feeling of displacement followed her through adolescence, even as she studied drama at the Central School of Speech and Drama. In an industry long dominated by men, especially in comedy, Helen had to constantly prove herself that women could be sharp, biting, and deeply insightful on stage without being boxed in by gender stereotypes. Her personal life also passed through many difficult and irreparable cracks. After a broken marriage in the 1990s, Helen became a single mother, trying to balance work and raising her daughter. During that time, she struggled with mental pressure, loneliness, and the disappointment of diminishing acting opportunities. Her later TV appearances, though often dubbed as a comeback, were frequently overshadowed by younger stars, making Helen feel as though she was slipping away from the very world she once helped build. Today, Helen Letterer is one of the leading voices demanding equality for women in British comedy. Although her net worth doesn't place her among the most famous millionaires, estimated at around £500,000, Helen's true value lies in her resilience and uncompromising voice. She once said, "If I don't write about myself, then who will?" And true to her word, after all the ups and downs, Helen still holds onto her pen and continues to show up. Though they have passed on, the laughter and legacy they left in The Young Ones still live on in the hearts of fans. But after everything, we must ask, was the price of fame too high for such sensitive souls? Do you remember a moment that made you laugh and cry at the same time? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to follow for more untold stories behind the spotlight.